Hello, my name is Drew Wilson. I am a very avid fly fisherman, and my lady and I travel full time in our old Airstream that I am in currently, the Happy Trout. We are currently in Rockport, Texas. We've spent a little over a month here already. We're spending the first half of our winter here. And I've been fishing primarily for redfish, black drum, and sheepshead since I've been here. So sheepshead are notoriously hard to catch on a fly rod. Really, with artificial in general, I hear that they are extremely difficult. But as far as fly fishing goes, you'll talk to local guides who will tell you they've only caught a couple in their career or actually landed a couple in their career. But you hear that bait fishermen just wear them out. And so in my mind, it's like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. I just have to figure out what they're doing. So we went out to the big jetty in Port Aransas and went and watched some bait fishermen fish. And what they were doing is just essentially dropping a shrimp, either tight lining it down, putting a lot of weight on it and dropping it down, or putting it below a bobber and just fishing within like 8 foot of the jetty. Most of them were right on the rocks. And they were catching sheepshead left and right. You know, if they weren't actually catching them, they were at least hooking them or getting their bait stolen almost every single cast. So in my mind, I was like, why can they do it and I can't? I decided what I would try to emulate this, you know, to emulate what they're doing. And if you have watched any of my videos ever, you could totally guess what I did. I put a marabou jig below an indicator, you know, and fished in salt water below an indicator, which a lot of people think is just so stupid. But rather than chasing sheepshead around on the flat, because I didn't need, like, there's no part of me that's like, I have to conquer that challenge. All I wanted to do is just figure out the fish and just catch some numbers of them to see if I could do it. So I put a 1/32 of an ounce olive and peach marabou jig by PJ's Tackle Company under a larger lightning strike football indicator on 12-pound line. And I essentially went down to a rock wall that's right up the road, about a half-mile from where I'm sitting right now here in Rockport, and would drop that jig down right outside the rocks on a pretty windy day. So the wind would kick up the waves, which would lift my indicator up, and in turn my jig is following it. So it's kind of rising and falling with the waves. And if you've never seen a marabou jig react underwater, marabou is such like a natural flowing looking material when it's wet, especially with movement. It's why marabou, like, man, it just looks really nice, you know. And so it just kind of bounces and falls. It's got a really nice natural movement. And to me, I figure if I drop that down right outside a rock, it may not look quite like a shrimp, but it's going to look like something just kind of naturally sitting there and floating. And why would a sheepshead not eat it? So I went down to the wall here and gave it a shot. And in my first 45 minutes of being there, I landed 5. And this is a fish that people tell you is so hard to catch on a fly rod. And I understand that it's harder to catch them on the flats because they're more spooky than it is in the rocks. But as I said, it wasn't about trying to catch them on the flats. It was just about trying to catch them on a fly rod. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm walking the rocks, I'm dropping my fly down and letting it be, you know, close to a rock. I'll usually give it about 10 seconds. I figure if there's a fish there that was looking out that would come out and grab my fly and go back in, he'll do it in that 10 seconds. And if not, I'll just keep moving. And essentially I'll walk down and check every little area that's available to see if there is a fish there. That indicator will most likely, if it's a nice windy day, which I prefer a windy day, because the waves are lifting your indicator, if it goes down on the bottom of a wave and a fish grabs your indicator and then the wave goes up, your indicator is not coming up with the wave because there's a fish holding your fly down, and it lets you know to set the hook. Sometimes sheepshead will come up and grab it and not do anything. And so I've caught several when I'm pulling back to cast again, you know, like pulling up back to check another area and I hit something and there's a nice fish there. And that's happened several times. I haven't really dialed that yet. I've tried tight lining to them where I'll just drop a jig straight down, you know, without anything below it and just keep my line tight and just kind of move it naturally with the waves. But I've had less success doing that than under the bobber, you know, which is, it's not necessarily it doesn't make a bunch of sense, but it's working for me. And For a fish that you hear is the hardest fish to catch, to be able to go down and fish for an hour and a half and have a 10 fish day is awesome, you know? So I just wanted to share it. So as soon as you set the hook on these fish, they have a tendency, instead of running straight out into the ocean away from where you're standing, they like to either dive right into the rocks that you're standing on, or the larger and smarter fish love to run about 30 foot down the wall and then dive in. And what that does, if you don't move your feet and stand there, is it lets them take your line down and then down into a tunnel, and they can go through whatever series of rock tunnels they have down there, and you can get broke off very easily. You could even break your fly line. Not just like your leader, but your actual fly line could get cut on these rocks if you let them get too far away from you. So what I like to do is, as soon as I set the hook and the fish starts to run down the wall, I'm running with them. That way I'm pacing them, and if they dive into the rocks, they're diving under me rather than like 10 foot away. So I can stick my rod down and pull them back out of the same little hole they're trying to go in, and that keeps those fish from breaking you off on the rocks. Now, there's fish that are large and strong. These fish are super strong for their size, so some of them you can't really do anything about it. There's several times that I just get heartbroken where I set the hook and I know I've got a 5-pounder or something like that, and he ends up running down and I'm chasing him and doing everything right, and he goes into the rocks and breaks me off, and there's nothing I could have done. That happens. It's completely fine. It's the name of the game. It's just part of fishing. Particularly fishing on a very rocky area. If you bonefish in Hawaii and get cut off on coral, I mean, it's just part of the game. If you're a bass fisherman, it's happened on logs plenty of times. Everyone's had it happen. So when it does happen to you, it's not like you're doing anything wrong. It's just you can't really get away from that. What I have figured out to be the ideal conditions for this type of fishing for sheepshead is a day that is relatively windy and when the water is a little dirty. So what I like about this is I can get up in the morning and go fish redfish, and if something should happen, like the wind picks up pretty heavy and the water ends up getting kind of messy and I can't see so well, it doesn't really do great for redfish, but it means that the sheephead game is going to be good. So I'll paddle back in, load my kayak up, and go find a good wall or jetty to fish on, and usually that helps me a lot. I have also learned that any time of low visibility, so whether the water's dirty, it's really wavy, or it's that golden hour right before the sun goes down, like the last 45 minutes of light, those are the times that have become most productive for me. I had a morning where I went and fished for about 45 minutes and I had one grab and landed one fish, and that was it. And I fished very thoroughly. So I went back that evening and fished the exact same spot and landed 5 fish after a day, you know, of a morning of fishing the same amount of time and catching only one. And in my brain, I think that it's like because of the low light. I think low visibility is helpful. I think the fish feel less protected whenever they're leaving those rocks in low visibility water because of dolphins or whatever, you know, whatever is targeting them. So I feel like they like to come out of the rock, grab the food, get back in it. And that is honestly what you want, because that's what makes your indicator move, and that's what lets you know that there's a fish there. Let's see. There's other flies that I've thought would totally work for this that I haven't actually tried yet. Like a jig head Pat's rubber legs that sits vertically with a lot of, like, you know, funky legs coming off of it that's a little smaller. I thought would work really well doing the exact same thing. That's really like the main fly I've thought about. Maybe a jig head shrimp. You could try that as well. But if you're just looking for, like, I wouldn't say it's a sure thing, but if you're looking to try something that you know works for them, try the olive and peach marabou jig, 1/32 of an ounce. That's, I'll write the numbers down in the description and you can check it out. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how I've been catching fish. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. If you think that fishing with an indicator in the ocean is completely unheard of, and you think I'm an idiot, just keep it to yourself, because I still have feelings of inadequacy just like everyone else. And even though I've caught a lot of sheepshead recently, you know, I'm still learning. But yeah, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.